Most of the growth that we expect from renewables, in fact, we expect 5,300 gigawatts of new renewable capacity to be added. Most of this capacity is going to be added in Southeast Asia. The region is going to account for a little bit more than 60% of all the capacity that we foresee to be added between now and 2050. That's from a geographic standpoint, but from a technology standpoint, it's going to be very interesting to see as well the dominance of solar photovoltaics. We expect this technology to account for 60% of all the new additions. And together with the wind technology, these two together, solar photovoltaics and wind, are going to account for 95% of all the renewables capacity that we expect will be added between now and 2050. I think that the question is not one or the other. I think that they play a role at different moments of time. As traditionally, policy has been the driver of the growth of renewables because cost was not there. With the amount of capacity that has been added over the past years, what we have seen is a cost decline of solar photovoltaics and onshore wind, and as well offshore wind. And now it's cost. So renewables are so cost competitive in some parts of the world. They are the cheapest source of new power generation that is available. And as a result, policymakers, they look at renewables as a cheap and an economically interesting source of new generation. Then policymakers are taking advantage of this cost advantage and are issuing policies in order to make sure that this economic attractiveness or competitiveness of renewables is leveraged. Yes, of course, there is a very big challenge that policymakers and power systems will have to deal with, is intermittency. Renewables are a source of generation that is intermittent by nature. The wind is not always blowing, as the sun is not always shining. And really, you need to have power systems that can deal with this situation. So if we take into consideration that 73% of all the power or generation capacity that will be added between now and 2050 is going to be renewables, and 50% of the new power kilowatt hours that are going to be produced between now and 2050 are going to come from renewable sources. Clearly, intermittency is going to be a big challenge, and power systems will have to deal with. Yeah, we do expect the cost of solar photovoltaics, onshore wind and offshore wind, to continue to decline. We expect that solar photovoltaics cost to halve between now and 2050. More or less the same is going to be seen for offshore wind. And then for onshore wind, we expect 30% more or less of cost reductions between now and 2050. The drivers of these cost reductions are going to be different. For solar photovoltaics, the cost reduction is going to be driven mainly by capex reductions. In the case of onshore wind and partially offshore wind, what is going to drive the cost is really the improvement of the availability, the capacity factor, the amount of electricity that you can produce per each megawatt installed of these technologies. If we consider that we have to deal with a large amount of intermittent generation into the power systems, clearly storage and solutions around storage, and by storage I don't mean only batteries, but I mean storage as a solution, are going to be extremely relevant. Another technology that is going to see a lot of momentum is going to be floating offshore, because it can help to unlock a significant amount of potential in countries like Japan, in some parts of Europe, even in the US, where we see a lot of projects that are now being considered, assuming that the floating offshore technology is going to be there. And then all the technologies around digitalization, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, all these solutions that are going to enable or to facilitate a better integration of renewables into more atomized power systems.